All right, I'm gonna go ahead and hit record. That's so you came. I just unrelated, but where did you go to school then for journalism?
Brigham Young University.
Oh, okay, cool, cool. You're not? Are you Mormon yourself?
It was at the time.
Ah, okay.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah,
A lot has changed.
yeah. We don't have to get into that. Well, let's fast forward to today. I wanted to start off and ask you, what is your role as Chief Content Officer at Premier Guitar? What does that entail on a daily basis?
I guess to put it simply, I oversee the production of all of our content from video and audio to written content and social media stuff, anything that is our product, so to speak, as far as content is technically my responsibility, but
Yeah.
that of course involves overseeing a full-time staff of about 10 people from, we have a couple of designers and a couple of videographers and multiple text writers and editors, but we also all of us also dabble in, audio production or podcasting or video production. So it's kind of, you have these days, if you aren't wearing a lot of hats like that, you're probably not going to be relevant very long.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that was the case, when I was in school, they were always saying that diversify your skill set. You're going to have to be a jack of all trades, like with photos. And I mean, at the time, video and podcasting weren't as big. They weren't kind of on the radar of the teachers there. But now, I'm assuming it's like a requirement, basically.
Yeah. Where did you go to school?
Illinois State.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, we also have quite a few freelancers. So I do not a ton, but a decent amount of interacting with them. Our managing editor, Tessa Jeffers, does most of that, like assigning of, especially of written content. But I will consult with various authors if there's like a conceptual story or cover story or really specific thing that needs to be done. So
yeah,
it's kind of all over the map with that stuff.
Cool. And how long have you been in that position?
In January, it will be 12 years.
12 years. Okay, wow, cool. Congrats.
Thanks.
What about the magazine? Actually, I know this is probably a different answer for both. Could you give me the sort of reader demographic breakdown between the magazine and maybe the website?
So as far as like
age,
actual
gender.
data, that's pretty tough. I would put it this way, that it's pretty much what you would expect, especially by platform, as far as, it depends where you're consuming our content. If you're online, if you're on Facebook or whatever, then it's probably going to be skewed toward, more middle-aged male and traditionally minded, more orthodox, perhaps a little more conservative. If you're following us on Instagram or whatever, then it's probably skews a little younger and more open-minded.
Yeah.
We, as far as our content, we're really proud of our track record of being really diverse. It's kind of along the lines of what you were saying earlier, because the state of things in the guitar media wasn't super pretty for a while in a lot of respects. But my entire time here, and all of the people that I work with, we're very much about being as diverse as possible, in all ways. Whether it's the genre that we cover or the gender identification or their sexual orientation or ethnicity. We pride ourselves on covering cool music first. This
Yeah.
isn't the place that we've worked really hard not to be the place that is where dead or nearly dead white middle-aged men rule. you know we honor and respect certain those players too, and we give them, I think, reasonable play in our lineup of content. But we also I don't think you could follow us for even a day online and not be introduced to many artists and pieces of gear or types of music or concepts that you probably weren't on your radar before, and we're really proud of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like you hinted at before, I think it is an ongoing, maybe problem's not the right word, with a lot of guitar media skewing male. She Shreds Media is a good exception, and they do great work and admire a lot of what they do. We try, I think you've probably noticed as a longtime fan of guitar media yourself, that some of that some of those more overt cringy aspects have thankfully gone away the last few years, although it took a remarkably long time for some of them, I'm sure you know what I'm referring to, to go away. But at the same time, I think there are still remnants, and there have been for that same amount of time since some of the more egregious offenses went away. I still feel like if you looked around guitar media, there was still quite a bit of cringiness from the mainstream stuff. It was like almost overcompensation, like this sort of fake, in my opinion, or my perception, like 50 best female guitarists. We've never done a story like that, and we never will. That, I mean, how condescending and patronizing is that? Like, I can't speak for women and any other minority than what I am, or anything than myself, but I don't think any player wants to be grouped by these sort of peripheral facts or realities about who we are as people. I don't want, like, it's an insult, in my opinion, no matter how good a player is, to be like, these are the top 50 female guitarists, or the top 100 solos by guitarists, or anything like that. It's just, that's bullshit. It's like, so I thankfully, I think we've moved past that a lot in the industry. Hopefully we continue to do more, because it still is very male dominated, but we try hard to really be open-minded and keep the landscape fresh and introduce people to new ideas and keep improving ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think it's kind of evolving in stages, where there was that overcorrection phase, and like being, I guess, overly blunt with like, here are female guitarists, like we're putting them out in front of you kind of thing approach. And then and not necessarily with your magazine, I'm not saying that, but just in general, I think you see that a lot. Like, I think I look at like the auto industry as kind of a comparable example to guitars in their representation of women. It's a little bit different, but I think both have come a long way from where they were 30, 40 years ago.
Thankfully,
but I wanted to ask you what with your approach with diversity in mind, and what you put out there as far as articles and content, what are you seeing? What types of stories are really resonating with readers? And is any of that a surprise to you? Like, maybe you didn't see that catching on, but it did?
People, of course, it varies. Some you and I know, and it's probably just common sense that some people are going to just be super into hearing new music and discovering new artists or players, and others are more technically minded with regard to gear or whatever.
Yeah.
But we do see some trends where people seem to really love DIY videos and articles, whether they're on modding or maintenance or whatever. People tend to love that. People love to see and hear new gear pretty much the second they hear about it. They want to hear it demoed because, you know, it's fun. These are things that help us create. And even though some of us are really tempted to fetishize them almost, they, you know, in a healthy usage scheme, they, you know, can help inspire new music and new ways of expressing ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, you are probably in a similar position, being at a retailer, or me at a guitar media outlet. We tend to have access to some of the new gear before anyone else does, and so they get excited to see, for us to show them some of its possibilities in videos. And then I think beyond that, really people just want something unique and fun and positive, and that, you know, is at a brisk pace, and that they don't have to sit through, or whether it's watching or reading, that they don't have to sift through, pardon my language, a shitload of stuff to get to the gold, you know, to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
In the past, I think it could easily be an assumption for people who worked in guitar media to just be like, they're just waiting for us to put stuff out and they will read or consume as much of it as we put out. That's totally not the case.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to know your readers better now, for sure. You know, one question I had that I actually want to add a precursor to, let's say another magazine that shall not be named, when I was growing up, seemed like the cover story was a rotating cast of, let's say, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Dimebag,
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, yep. Over and over again. But, you know, I don't want to say for good reason, but, you know, those guys were the guitar heroes, Van Halen too.
Steve Vai, Satriani.
Yeah, exactly. Are those, how would I try to phrase this? Do you think that kind of age is over? Do you think we'll ever have any new people that fit into that mold that could be, you know, cover stories 20, 30 years from now?
Now, so before I answer that, is this sort of along the lines of the emerging stars question that you had sent forward? Is that kind of the same thing you're getting at, or is that more of a follow-up? Or
I guess to make yes and no. I mean, I'm also asking, like, do you think we'll have future guitar heroes, or is that age kind of over?
You know, who am I to say, you know, speak categorically, but in my opinion, just probably, you know, because of how the world and technology and media and social media have evolved and come into existence and changed the entire landscape of how we view the world and interact with each other.
Yeah,
I don't know if it will be quite the same. I mean, there's just so many avenues. You know, when you and I were younger, reading guitar magazines, there was no YouTube. There was you if you wanted to learn more about guitar stuff, all you had was what was in these magazines. Now you can go online to a whole bunch of different places and platforms and social media, or even if it were just YouTube, there are innumerable things to watch and see and hear on any subject, but also in music. Like, so probably, probably never in the same way that those artists we mentioned were so ubiquitous
Yeah.
as in the past. Also because, the more a certain, in my opinion, the longer that a certain artistic medium exists, the harder it can be to stand out as quote unquote unique or, really identifiable from others. And it can feel like, I don't believe it's true, but it can often feel like, well, what else is there to do? And of course, there's a ton more to do artistically in terms of music or any other art form, but we have to push ourselves into those areas and be willing to embrace other people who do. And of course, that's a constant battle in anything related to consumerism or entertainment or, follow the money. It's what makes money, what makes people feel important. So it's a constant tug of war, I think.
Sure.
But I guess simple answer is probably not the way it was.
Mhm.
But I certainly think that there will continue to be new players who intrigue and excite people. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think of, like I have 3 kids who were, grown up young men now, just the youngest graduated from high school last year. And having grown up with me, they know a lot of music they know and love a lot of the music that I love, but I will hear them talk about things, people from school or whatever, where their perceptions are sometimes shocking compared to my perception of things. Like I guess one example is I like a lot of punk rock,
Mhm.
and to teenagers now in high school, I won't name the band because I don't want to, I don't want to slag anyone, but one of the bands that is considered like the shit in punk rock, I loathe, and I just think like, what? Like, it's sad, and I risk sounding like a geezer. I know that.
Yeah. Can you tell me off the record? I promise it's off the record.
Blink 182.
Oh God. Yeah.
They'll be like, Blink 182, they define punk rock. You're like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
Well,
and I know
and-
I can be very opinionated, but just that dude's voice
Yeah.
is so, it's like a whiny teenager to me.
Yeah.
Mom, take us to the mall.
Yeah.
But in other areas too, it's just an inevitable reality of the march of time. But like, you and I grew up I idolize, maybe it's not the right term. I love Led Zeppelin. They're one of my favorite bands, and Jimmy Page is a huge influence on me.
Mhm.
There are tons of kids now who love Greta Van Fleet, and they don't even fucking know who Led Zeppelin is.
Yeah.
They don't know who Jimmy Page is, and they think that Greta Van Fleet is the shit. And again, super strong bias here and off the record, because I don't want to slag those guys. They're doing what they love, and they're doing their best, and more power to them.
Yeah.
It's not my thing. When I hear it, it seems incredibly derivative, and it seems to lack, in my opinion, it lacks the originality and magic that Zeppelin had.
Mhm.
It seems in many ways like a ripoff to me.
Mhm.
But again, that's so, I don't know, I'm totally going off the rails, but I think, time changes, and those bands are huge, even though they aren't huge for me, and that will continue in an endless cycle, I hope. We can't avoid that. There will always be huge stars in any field that time forgets.
Mhm.
And only the only a very select few will be remembered past their lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know where the hell I was going with all that.
No, that was, I agree totally. I think we're no longer at, our culture is so different now. There's so many avenues for musicians to break out. It's like we have, instead of a few giant stars, we have a lot of smaller stars in a lot of different niche subgenres. When I talk to people, I kind of make the point that I think there are more great guitarists active right now than there have ever been, yet none of them are as big as the icons of, yesteryear.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like no matter what you're into, if you're into like funk, there's Corey Wong. If you're into math, there's like Yvette Young, and just like there are these stars in all sorts of subgenres, and it's just a lot more diverse than it was back then.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
the double-edged sword
Infinite
of that is
subgenres.
infinite, yeah. And the dark side of that is that none of them will ever be as big as Stevie Ray Vaughan, even though they're a lot more innovative than he was. But
or were they? Or are they?
or were they? That's true. I do think Stevie's legacy is kind of dulled just by how many clones came after him and
totally.
how overplayed it's become. So there's that too. Yeah.
And to be fair, if you, even with like my example of loving Zeppelin, I'm well aware that they totally, and anyone should be, that in certain sense, they totally ripped off all these killer blues artists from the past that most people don't know the names of even anymore. On the first album, a large portion of the lyrics are straight out of blues numbers that they did not write. And but they, so there's always that, the flip side of the coin, I think, with any genre or band or whatever.
Yeah.
But so my heroes might be someone else's who's older with a different perspective. They might view them as ripoffs too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're right about Led Zeppelin. I mean, it's a sad fact, but yeah, it's true. So then you wonder how mad can you be at Greta Van Fleet? In a way, it's all kind of a cycle.
At the same time, on that specific point, I do, I would argue that yes, they owe invaluable debts to blues artists, and they certainly borrowed a lot, but they also evolved. And by the second, third album, they were writing their own lyrics and exploring a lot of different things and creating this wonderful new melange, and I think going in really unique, instantly identifiable directions, whether it's from drum sound or iconic riffs or just incredible songs that or solos or whatever. But I personally don't I don't hear that when I hear Greta Van Fleet, but I'm not I'm not listening to them a lot either. They were young guys, and they'll probably grow into different areas. But these are just examples that we use to kind of talk about a bigger idea, hopefully. But again, none of it is against anyone personally, and I think probably music fans from any generation or bent have similar feelings about something. Some artists, something there, like we're all kind of snobs in some way or another. Although hopefully we're all trying to be open-minded too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so it kind of related to that. Are there any guitarists you see that are, have emerged in the last 5 to 10 years, who you could see being, who you think, no, let's just say who you think are the guitar, like who are the biggest guitar stars of today?
Um, Honestly, as someone who both gravitates towards some sort of, maybe subversive isn't the perfect word, but sort of more irreverent or subversive attitudes and ideas there and music, but also as someone who seriously worries about the psychological impacts of social media
Yeah.
and everything, social media and, shall we say, its enhanced realities, and just what's often portrayed there. I'm not sure I like or even care about the notion of an emerging guitar star. And that might sound, I don't mean that flippant or judgmental, but especially as if you watch the news or read the news, you can't help in the last year or two, just with, say, revelations about Facebook alone, fail to see a lot of impacts on our collective psyche that were probably never foreseen or thought about by any of us using them. And but myself as a father too, that shit, it is still affecting and has been affecting us kind of under our noses for a long time now. And it's like all sorts of effects are starting to manifest themselves that we were so oblivious to with the internet in general, but with YouTube and social media. It's like I worry that so much of what young players, and all players, not just young ones, but especially young ones, so much of what they see on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok can either discourage them from playing at all or groom them to have low self-esteem and to focus on technique or image or clicks and flash, and to give them these kind of empty notions about these misguided worries about focusing on audio or video fidelity and production values over over music. It's like so much of what you see on there. There's a lot of awesome stuff, don't get me wrong. And then again, I don't want to be, I probably will be, but I don't want to be dismissed as the boomer, but so much of what I see online related to guitar stuff is just like, it sacrifices the sacredness of originality and fire and genuineness on these altars of click-driven popularity, so-called popularity. It's like both the algorithms and our insecure brains seem to favor or push us toward conformity and perceived perfection, or agility, or more than it does toward music that really emotes or reveals truths from the depths of our hearts and our minds.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that was something that I didn't have on my list, but in talking to you, I just thought of as like, what would you say has been social media's impact on guitar culture? And I think you answered it really well. Because it is I hate, and I keep saying it, but a double-edged sword in that, so many different types of guitars could be getting exposure that never would have been seen before. But at the same time, I think this is social media's effect on pretty much everything, from, whatever category you're into, fashion, sports, whatever, music, where, you know, the algorithm kind of streamlines all the creators into trying to make something that fits, that'll be successful in the algorithm and that looks good, that is a certain length of time and has these certain aesthetics that do well. And you see that with guitarists, you know, the super clean pedal boards where you can't even see the cables. And you know, I see a lot of good guitarists who can play a really cool like neo soul R&B kind of lick, but it's like 20 seconds long. I'm like, okay, but can you play a whole song? You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you're right, and like everything kind of seems to fit this certain mold without ever, and while it's something new, it's also something very Instagram-y. It still fits into that Instagram kind of box without looking like a truly honest work of art, or like a, you know, something that that person was really passionate about. It seemed more like created for clicks.
Yep.
Yeah.
I decided a long time ago, just for myself,
Mm-hmm.
partially as sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, partially as an artistic decision, but also as just a practical decision as someone, you know, who has kids and works and, you know, plays in
Yeah.
a band and has lots of responsibilities, you know, trying to be a good dad and husband and all that. I decided a long time ago I wasn't going to learn other people's songs anymore. Not because I play guitar to express my own inner musical ideas, not because they're better than anyone else's, but that's what makes me happy,
Mm-hmm.
is writing my own songs and riffs and music and you know, lyrics and stuff. And I certainly, I'm not saying that is what other people should do, but I do think that I have, by not learning exactly how to play someone else's music, no matter how much I love it, I think it is really good. It has been good for me as far as what I value in music and in my own guitar and music journey. I mean, let's face it, you can't avoid being influenced. Everything we hear as musicians,
Yeah.
everything we hear somehow influences us, our decisions, whether it's to steer clear of it or, oh, that had something cool about it that I liked, whether it was in the melody or rhythm or tone or an infinite number of nuances
Mm-hmm.
that are possible, but everything influences us. But I personally think there is a lot to be said for allowing our conscious influences, the music we love or like, to influence us sort of through osmosis, so to speak, to
Yeah.
naturally filter into how we play. Rather, I think personally, for me, I feel like if I learn exactly how to play something that someone, how they played it, that I'm much more likely to just regurgitate what they did.
Mm.
Now, I still might do that by some accident, by just like, oh, my brain starts doing what it heard, even though I never like sat down and did it. So it's a constant struggle. But I think people care too much about mastering what someone else did, and we don't care enough about discovering our own quirks, our own weirdness. We should celebrate our weirdness. And in my column for Premier Guitar, I've written about this many times over the years. We should stop caring about perfection or, and this is, again, this funny, this will bring up Led Zeppelin again, and that will make you probably give you a misguided notion of how much I'm into Zeppelin. I do love them, but they're like nowhere they're just one of many influences. But
Sure. Yeah.
not too long ago, I can't even remember the title of it or the, the huge, all the things that were said in it. But one day I was driving along, and my iTunes in my car just randomly went to shit, what's the name of the song? It's off Led Zeppelin 1. I'll have to look it up. I can send it to you later, but it's a track, super famous. Hold on, let me bring up my iTunes. You can hear John Bonham's kick pedal squeaking throughout the whole song.
Oh yeah. Is it Good Times, Bad Times?
There's probably more than one, but
Yeah.
Well, shit. For some reason, it's not showing up right here. Anyway, point is, nowadays, so many people would have thrown away that take, but it was a fucking amazing take. Like, I'm sure when they listen back, they're like, oh, dude, you can like hear that squeaking the whole time. But who fucking cares? It was a incredible, one of a possibly once in a lifetime take, and they kept it. Like the groove and everything was killer. The Pages playing on it is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But these days we're too tempted to just fix everything, quote unquote. We should celebrate how our weird tendencies. Like again, I'm not holding myself up, but we shouldn't be afraid to write something that's not in 4/4, something that's in an odd time signature, or that is super fast or super slow, or that combines feels or instruments that are not supposed to go together.
Yeah.
There's too much conformity, I guess, bottom line.
Yeah. I think you're right, because like the squeaky kick pedal, or like I think of the on Beat It by Michael Jackson, the like knock on the studio door before Eddie's solo that's left in the track. That's the kind of stuff that becomes like legendary. And as much as I complained about like the carousel of Guitar Heroes that would be on the covers, like there's a reason that they're still interesting today, is because you can constantly go back and look at more and more of like just interesting things that they did. And you're right, nowadays like everything's quantized and overproduced to the point of being sterile, and there's not going to be much to look back on in 20 years from some of the stuff being made today that will be interesting, or that'll be what's the word, serendipitous about the recording process, or about the band itself.
We need to be, I totally agree. We need to be super careful and conscious of not having an Instagram filter mentality, because no one wants to listen to something that is the musical equivalent of the cute big anime eyes or cat ears or whiskers or whatever. Like most people, they want originality. They want real emotion. What does originality mean? Throw that word away. People want something that feels real, not like a cover up, not like what they think you want them to do.
Right. And I mean, I think that's not unique to guitar. Social media, I think it's social media's impact on everything, like vacation photos, even whatever it is. Yeah. So I mean, you've kind of also talked about this, but are there any other big cultural changes you've seen in guitar over the last, well, let's say since you took your position at Premier Guitar? What have you seen major trends or big changes?
I don't think we can talk about that without still kind of dovetailing into some of the stuff we've mentioned before. The ubiquity of social media and video has changed everything, not just the stuff we've discussed so far, but how we think about playing itself. And, I think it's safe to say that the majority of people probably learn how to play from YouTube, and therefore and this isn't necessarily a good or bad thing, but it's less about theory or any sort of academic knowledge and more just about visualization. And I'm not saying that as someone from, I took lessons my first 5 years of playing, but that was, I stopped at 17, and, I know a little bit, but I'm not saying you even need that. It doesn't even matter. I don't say that about the way we learn with any judgment necessarily. It's just an observation that has changed the ways that people learn to play. It's changed how we're exposed to it, how much of it we're exposed to, and the types we're exposed to.
Yeah.
But again, also affected our self-esteem in pretty catastrophic ways, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think those really are the most important changes that I've seen over the last decade or so. There are other ones, of course, but in the culture, I would say those are probably the biggest ones that we've kind of hit on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I wonder, I don't know, I don't want to sound like a boomer either and assume this, but I wonder how much time, like a young, let's say like a 12-year-old learning guitar, that's great. And it's great that there are so many resources out there for them to learn. But how much time are they spending just playing and exploring the instrument without a phone or a computer in front of them, without a lesson playing or tabs open or something? Because I think that's really critical to developing your own style.
Totally. That's what I was getting at, is I think the more we fill our heads with what someone else is doing,
Yeah.
the less time and impetus and sort of mental and physical muscle memory there is to discover our own quirks. We're too busy putting ourselves into someone else's box, instead of letting our, through as long as humans exist, there will continue to be the same potential for brilliance and creativity and uniqueness. It just has to be discovered, and it has to be, you have to want to discover it, but you also have to, I feel like, with the way culture, just culture in general is evolving, that you have to be cognizant of the dangers and protect yourself from them in certain ways, and
so then I'm curious, knowing kind of your thoughts on social media, your concerns about how it's influencing us, what do you look for when determining what to publish from Premier Guitar on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever?
Well, above all, it's always about the music.
I
kind of hinted at that before.
Yeah.
But we get it every day. We get a ton of emails from publicists with new music from all over the world, and from big labels all the way down to just a guy.
Yeah.
Just someone, individual musicians recording at home. And obviously it's just a huge deluge that we couldn't possibly hope to keep up with, but we do our best to listen to it all and find what seems unique and interesting from a guitar perspective and a musical perspective and a human perspective.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's, of course, a lot of it is like you have daily deadlines. We're putting stuff up online all day, every day, and then we have a magazine, and so there are deadlines all over the place, and we have to be putting stuff out. So of course we're at the mercy of, what's available. And we are, of course, a business too. So we're,
Mhm.
we have all these different facets to consider in what we cover.
Yeah, 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 totally. Do you ever worry about what guitar's status in popular culture is, or what its current like relevance is?
Um, no.
That's good.
I don't really about popular culture in general, though. I mean,
Well, sure.
there will always be trends, and there will always be, I firmly believe that there will always be pretty much the same ratio of inspired, intriguing music to shit that there always has been. We're humans. We
Yeah.
have a pretty well established pattern of behaviors in all aspects of life, and some people will seek after the fame and money or whatever's fleeting. Some will be lucky enough to, some will not, some will seek their true artistic hearts, and some will be lucky enough to be able to do both, and then everything in between.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's probably saying enough on that.
No, that's good. That's a good answer. And then last question I have for you, how do you see the instrument itself evolving, let's say over the next 10 years?
I would guess that cheap, powerful, shrinking computational power will continue, to try to feed consumers' cravings for convenience.
Mhm.
I'm sure that we'll continue to see ever smaller digital devices that, model amps and effects, and it will probably, probably most brands or a lot of brands will probably feel like they have to get into that, apart from probably, smaller boutique pedal makers, I would guess. I'm sure there's going to be there will still be a variety like there is now, I think. But who knows, things, course of history is exceptionally slow and very hard to predict. Like, from one year to the next, it can seem imperceptibly different, but skip ahead 25 years, you're like,
Yeah.
that thing's extinct, but I would imagine that probably technology and apps and modeling and all that will just continue to be more and more ubiquitous, and it will be cheaper and perhaps built right into guitars and stuff. But I think there is also something inherent in guitar and what draws many people to guitar that is very raw and primal, and that will survive. I sure hope it does, because it's fucking awesome, and that's what, it's what draws me to it. And I love music and things from all over the place, so I'm not anti any genre or any technology or anything. I'm just excited to see people try to push their own boundaries and try to explore their own inner landscapes and their inner,
Yeah.
be true to themselves and create cool music without worry for what someone else is going to say or think, and who cares how they do it. The way you do it might be very different in terms of technique or tools or technology than how I do it, but that's what makes art wonderful, is that we do it no matter how we do it, just that we do that. We push ourselves to really emote from the heart.
Yeah. Awesome. That's an awesome answer. Yeah. And we'll see how social media evolves too, if it does, or if it just continues getting worse. God, we'll see.
I'm sure it'll be a bit of both.
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of crazy to think with certain things now, like, if you look back from a certain perspective is everything, right? Like,
Mhm.
we look back at times when they didn't know smoking was bad for you. Like, you can look at TV shows from the 50s and the doctor is smoking in the patient's hospital room.
Yeah.
And that's just fucking ridiculous to us now.
Mhm.
But then there are similarly fucked up things happening now. Like, who with there's one big example just slipped my mind. I've been thinking about it recently, but again, social media is one. How could we think that giving a baby an iPhone and just having him flip through on YouTube all day long or whatever, and just growing up with this device with constant gratification and probably less interpersonal, like one-on-one human interaction would not affect who we or they become, and all sorts of things like that. We're humans, we continue to repeat the same sorts of mistakes, just in new guises.
Yeah.
But by the same token, we discover and do wonderful things in similar ways, the new guises that, like, if that makes any sense. There's
Yeah.
always the good stuff and the bad stuff, and despite perhaps the vibe I've given off with some of my comments, I am totally an optimist. But I don't think you can be an optimist or last as an optimist or be an effective optimist if you're not super aware of the shit that can take you down.
Yeah. Yeah.
The stuff you're dealing with. You can't have your head in the clouds, and then, I mean, you can, and I guess you might get super lucky that something good happens, but probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, yeah, time will tell. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to mention that I didn't touch on? Any final thoughts you have?
Not really. It seems like you covered all the stuff that you had mentioned in advance, and I appreciate you giving the question so it could give me some time to think about that stuff, because like I said before, I'm usually in your place considering,
Yeah. Yeah.
polishing up or planning content for other people. And even though, a lot of these thoughts are hovering in the background, they're usually just in my head, or
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's kind of fun to vent. So hopefully you
Yeah.
have some shit to work with that isn't too shitty.
No, you've got you said a lot of great stuff. This is gonna come out in April, so I've got time. And before I publish it, I do plan on sending it out to everybody who I've interviewed, and this is not something, this goes against what I believe, but because I work for a retail site, we want to make sure we have everything covered. So I'll be sending it around to just make sure you feel like I accurately represented you with quotes and things like that. So
Okay.
You'll be hearing from me again.
Okay.
Before it
And
comes out.
I'm so embarrassed that I cannot tell you the name of that Zeppelin song, but I will email it to you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, let me know.
Ridiculous.
I want to listen to it.
Since I've Been Loving You, that's what it is.
Oh, yeah. And that song
So I
has
don't need to email you
quiet
that
parts too. It's probably
Yeah. The dynamics are incredible.
yeah.
But again, like that squeaky kick pedal could have ruined it all, but they recognized that it was awesome and they resisted the urge to quote unquote fix it.
Yeah. That's really cool. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that now. Cool. Well, thanks again.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Sorry for talking your ear off.
No. It was a good talk. Yeah. I love talking music anytime, and just griping about social media too. One of my favorite topics as well. So yeah.
Been headlining it. Boomer from PG talks. No, just
No. Cool. Yeah, I will I'll send this around. If I happen to have any follow-up questions, I'll just reach out as well. So
okay.
yeah,
Cool.
cool, man. Nice
All right,
talking to
thanks,
you.
Mason.
Yeah,
You too. Take care.
have a great rest of the day.
You too.
Yeah.
See ya.